Association meeting today. This is our second or third virtual meeting, so we appreciate everyone's flexibility. My name is Rachel Hansen. I am the president of the Westside Association, and for those of you who are not familiar with what we are a membership organization to assist and encourage the growth and promotion of Westside businesses and our local community. We typically start with our treasurer's report and our chamber report, but I don't think either of those individuals were available to give their reports out today. As far as new business, we are going to continue with virtual Westside meetings, at least for the foreseeable future, and we will certainly update our members once we resume in person. A couple of virtual housekeeping rules. Everyone has been muted, and we will have a session at the end for question and answers. If you do have some questions, there is a chat feature at the bottom of your screen that you will see. Please feel free to use that to ask your question, and we will have those moderated for Julie to answer. We are really excited to have Julie Conrad with us today. She is the Director of Curriculum and Assessment for the Oshkosh Area School District. She has provided expertise and leadership in the areas of standards-based learning, grading, and record keeping, including the implementation of a standards-based grading system at the elementary level and a standards reference grading system at the secondary level. Julie provides leadership and facilitates processes that allow educators at the classroom, school, and district level to use student data to make instructional, resource, and organizational decisions. In addition, she fosters and strengthens partnerships with post-secondary institutions, business and community-based organizations that students are college, career, and community ready. Julie is currently leading the expansion of the Oshkosh Area School District E-Academy to the elementary grades, as well as a lead in implementing the ISC equity framework in the Oshkosh Area School District. Julie has 29 years of experience in education as a teacher and as an administrator. She is actively involved in the Oshkosh community and serves on the board of directors for Junior Achievement Winnebago Region and the Boys and Girls Club of Oshkosh. So we're very excited for Julie. And Julie, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm letting people in as they're coming in, and so there was a few new people on here, and I also see a bunch of familiar names. I can't see faces because you guys are all, your cameras are off, but anyway, welcome and thank you for having me. So I am going to go ahead and start to do my screen share here, and I've been practicing on presenting Zoom-wise, and so, I'm hoping that I have this down. Doing this, I've fumbled around a few different times trying to do Zoom presentations. And so let me go ahead and share my screen. And there we go. And then pulling it over into present. So there we go. And I'm going to move everybody up on top there. All right. So thanks for having me this afternoon. And what I'm going to talk about is a systems approach to equity in the Oshkosh Area School District. Actually, Dr. Kim Brown and I will be doing a board workshop on our systems approach to equity in the Oshkosh Area School District and how it intersects with all the different things that we do within the school district. And at this point in time, and where we are as a community, where we are as a state, where we are as a country, equity and ensuring that all of our students have access and the opportunities that they deserve within our communities and within a school system is currently really at the forefront and timely in our discussions. Today, what I would like to do is provide an overview of the Integrated Comprehensive Systems for Equity framework and why we chose that to lead our equity work. Understand the differences between deficit-based and asset-based thinking. That is a big piece of the work that we did last year and continuing this year. And then identify how this learning that our educators are doing in the Oshkosh Area School District connects to the work we have started, including being college, career, and community ready. So one thing I often start with is that as school districts, when we know better, we do better. And as you can see, I use this graphic with puzzle pieces often because as school systems, as our communities, as community-based organizations, we are all doing some great work to support families, to support a community, to support children. But the thing is that, is it all lined up? Is it systemic? And sometimes we make great connections, and sometimes we're off on different islands, and we're replicating, we're duplicating services, and we're doing things with the best of intentions, but we're not really looking at how we support children and how we educate children as a system or as a whole. So as we are working in our school district, as I've been working with community-based organizations, when we know better, we do better. And when we get new information, we apply it and we do better. And so what I mean by that is that we've been doing a lot of work with talking with families. We're going to be talking even more with families. We have an equity and diversity committee being led by Dr. Belinda Pinkston, our executive director of HR, that's going to really focus on how do we get the voices of our families, of our students, and that we're really representing everybody within our school district. And then taking that information and once again, lining up all the great work so that we can have synergies, and once again, we can be doing better in servicing our students. The Integrated Comprehensive Systems series, we are working, and we've been working since 2018 with Dr. Colleen Capper and Dr. Elise Frattura. Both of these ladies have been working in a system as far as for social justice, for equity, and their work really has, for the first time when I've been in education for 29 years, is how do we systemically approach things? Think about those puzzle pieces. We've been trying really hard in pockets to address issues, but we really need to be addressing a system. And so their framework has been the first time that we as a school district or as educators in Oshkosh have seen a way that we can systemically start to make changes that make a difference and impact our students. So our reality right now in America, and what we are talking about with our staff, and every time we are working with our staff on equity, is we always come back to what is the history, and what are we trying to address, and what are we trying to do better at. And so in our school systems, and many people have had many different experiences, so generalizing, schools have a culture of marginalization, whether it be at race, disability, language, social class, gender, sexual gender identity, religion, and other intersections. And so as we start to approach our work, children come with all kinds of backgrounds, families come with all kinds of backgrounds. And any one of these could be intersecting in a child's identity and in their background. And how are we addressing that? And are our systems supporting children, or are systems marginalizing children? So also we've been examining our systems because as a school system, how are we contributing to perpetuating poverty for our students and families of color, for students and families that may be of refugee background or coming to us from different places. And so if you think about school and what we know as school, here's a representation of a cycle that often happens. You have a student that comes from a low-income family, and we'll talk about the difference between deficit and asset-based language. They have a deficit view of a student or family. We as a system, maybe as a community-based organization, that something needs to be fixed or something that needs to be addressed in that student or family. What we often do is we lower expectations for students or for a family based on that. As an educator, I like to use hashtags or phrases. And so one of the hashtags that I use is, if you label them low, you teach them low. And when we lower expectations, they're not going to rise to their hopes and dreams. So we have low expectations, we label or place a student, we group or track them. The remedial or tracked groups perpetuate some failure. We blame society, poverty for the student failure. And then the student does not graduate, or they graduate with low skills, low paying job. And so what we really want to take a look at is how within our system of schools can we can change this. So as we're working with educators and with you as community leaders, I ask people to consider these questions. If our goal is to advance learning for all students across all identities, are we succeeding? When I talk about identities, those were the ones that were listed there, like race and gender, LGBTQ plus, religion, etc., faith background. How are we addressing the needs of students in the general education classroom so that we are not pulling students out, but provide to their needs so that they are with their peers? And is our response to intervention, is the way that we are remediating or providing additional skills for kids, is it working? So as we look at the equity framework, it is approach, and this is what it is and what it's not. So what it is a framework to foster equity. It's a process. It's research and evidence based over 5 years. What it's not, I thought I had like a little slide that came in here, but I guess I don't. But what it's not a quick fix. It's not a new program. It's really getting at the root of how do we make change so all students and families have what they need so that they can meet their hopes and dreams and be college, career, and community ready. So with that framework and process, there is 4 cornerstones that we're working through as a district or within the process that a group or an organization works through. Currently in the Oshkosh Area School District, we are in Cornerstone 1, developing the foundation and the focus on equity. As you build up that foundation, we move into Cornerstone 2, where we start to align students and staff underneath that focus on equity process. We engage and develop community, engage your community partners. Cornerstone 3, we start the process of transforming teaching and learning. In Cornerstone 4, we really start to leverage policy and funding. What's different about this framework and the steps and the processes is, if you notice in the upper left-hand corner in the green box, that's Cornerstone 1, where we really focus on the work and the why behind we are doing the work. And if you notice, like within the steps, we focus on the history of marginalization and what that focuses on in our current model, a deficit to assets-based thinking. And this is really key, because if we don't adjust the way that we look at families and children and their assets and their strengths, we're going to keep building on a deficit-based system. Equity begins with us in systems change, equity research, the non-negotiables, and then we start looking at data and our structures that can really drive the change. And then it moves into changes that you're going to see in changes in policy in the system. As we are working with Dr. Capper and Fratura, you have to have a strong base with working with your educators on shifting their thinking and really having them work on their identity development. Because if we continue to look at children, we continue to look at families from a deficit-based lens and not really truly understanding their experience and how their identities intersect, we're going to continue to build on a deficit-based system rather than changing the system to be more equitable. So with all of this, what we're trying to do is advance learning for all students across all of their identities. And so by doing that, this is where we're really hoping to disrupt the cycle and ensure that all students are college, career, and community ready. We may have a student coming from a low-income family. What we are focused on is engaging with, supporting, learn from the student and family and their community. Identity development of self, making sure that that child has windows and mirrors within their daily classroom interaction, within the text, the materials, and the things they interact with. I'm often asked, what do you mean by windows and mirrors when you talk about that? Every child, and actually every person, deserves to have, first of all, a mirror. an ability to see themselves within their school community, within their family, within whatever groups that they're associating with, because that builds a sense of belonging. But also having windows, in other words, an opportunity to be able to look into and engage with another person's culture or their identity so that you can build understanding. From that identity self-development, it's the assets view of students and families. How do we really look at strengths and start with strengths rather than trying to address deficits? Having high expectations for all students. Identity responsive rigorous learning. That's a mouthful, but that's really where my work is, and where I lead within the curriculum piece is that how do we look for resources, how do we organize our curriculum and our standards so that we are responsive to the learning of students. And then students graduate, their workforce and post-secondary options are wide open and they're ready, and that's where we interrupt that cycle of poverty. So as we're talking through things, perceptions matter. And so when we're doing work in Cornerstone 1 and we're working with our educators, what we often don't realize, and also as community-based organizations, is that we are sometimes doing stereotype threats and we're sometimes doing stereotype lifts. A stereotype lift and threat occurs every day in schools perpetuating marginalization. So let me give you an example of that. For some of us in here, we would, back in elementary school, you would be in the Bluebirds or the Robins reading group, right? And so the Bluebirds, would, and I don't know which one's which, but the Bluebirds would go and they would have these special books, and it felt really good to be part of the Bluebird group. But then if you were in the Robin group, you know that you had to go with a particular teacher, you may leave the room, and you're going, why am I going to have to do that? The way that we organize that in that particular classroom, being in one group is a stereotype lift, and that lift increases the performance, and when others are informed of a negative stereotype group, which would be the Robin group, and they're in the stereotype threat. I think that you can think of other things of like when people are grouped or are pulled out or separated, and you can think of some other times that you do threats and lifts. We have historically done that in schools. And so with those perceptions, with that marginalization within those groupings, how can we change the system so that we are not introducing those threats and lifts within our school? Another thing that we are working with teachers on, and we are working with our families on, adults, and I'm glad I can talk with you guys today, is we make a whole lot of assumptions. And Paul Gorski was just recently, I think it was last year, the year before, he worked with educators at UW Oshkosh. He was here working with us and working with UW Oshkosh pre-service teachers. And so his book is Reaching and Teaching Students in Poverties, and he's done a lot of research about that. So what does the research say relative to our frequent assumptions about students from lower social class homes? Because we have stereotypes about all different identities that a student might come to, but let's look at poverty. So one of the things we talk about in one of the stereotypes is laziness. So here's where we have a vast majority of people who are poor do work, and according to the Economic Policy Institute, adults who are poor and working spend more hours working per week on average than their wealthier counterparts. And so I'm just going to flip through these. These are places that we often hear, well, this family doesn't value education. Research has shown that parents who are low income have the exact same attitudes about education as parents who are wealthy. Parents care about their kids. Substance abuse, there's alcohol and abuse stereotypes when it comes to low income families. Also, I can tell you that from being in education as long as I have, mental health, I know at times that mental health does not discriminate, and working on our mental health and issues that are our children's face and our families face is not just low income. It crosses all socioeconomic areas. Crime and violence. I thought this one was, oops, excuse me. I thought that one was interesting. People who are low income do not commit more crime. They only commit more visible crime, and that was done away at all. Language deficient. This one's very interesting to me. One of the areas that I oversee in the school district is ESOL, and it's English for speakers of other languages. Linguists have known for decades that all varieties of English, Black English vernacular and Appalachian varieties, they're equally complex in structure and grammar. It's almost like you're speaking another language, but we look at that as a deficit. Bad parents. Research has continued shown that parents who are low income care just as much about their children and work just as hard. So with that, the reason we share that research and the reason that we go through those things is some of those stereotypes are prevalent out in our communities. Some of those stereotypes are prevalent with our educators because we come with all different types of biases in our own background. So we are really working on shifting from deficit-based language and to asset-based language within our school system. You'll often hear me when I'm talking that we're not talking about a disabled student. We talk about, or we say that it's a student with disabilities. Working with the English for Speakers of Other Languages program, we often say, oh, this student is a refugee. Actually, they are a student with refugee background because their flight or their movement from one country to another doesn't define them. It's part of their experience. So it's really trying to shift the thinking to where is it assets rather than looking at deficits, and also people-based language. And why are we focusing on that? Is because that when you start to think and talk that way, you shift your thinking about, and you shift the way you look at systems within your classroom, systems within your school, the way that you look at things within your community. And you're more likely to start thinking about how can we build on strengths versus thinking that we're solving a deficit or filling a problem, which ends up sometimes labeled as the student is the problem. So with that, where equity intersects with being college, career, and community ready is that every student in the Oshkosh Area School District, we want to make sure that they have a foundation of academics, that they can access and have the opportunity to be in highly rigorous courses like dual credit courses for college credit at the high school level. And that starts early on to make sure that they have what they need, that our students are financially literate, that every single student has had the opportunity to do career exploration and to look at what meets their hopes and dreams and where they want to be and where they have a passion, and also the life and career skills, those so-called soft skills or areas that we keep talking about with students. Like our employers keep saying, well, if they only were accountable and responsible, and talking through with kids and teaching directly, like what does that look like? What does that mean? And why do you want to have skills in those areas? Because as we take a look at this and we talk about college, career, and community readiness, and where I'm going to challenge you guys today from a West Side Association lens and out in our community is, what is our definition of success? Because often as a community, and some of us, I know I've had this conversation, I recognize names on here, and we've had this conversation in this room, so we have a very narrow view of what success looks like. Success might be you graduated from high school at the top of your class, you went to a 4-year university, you graduated in 4 years, you went on and got this well-paying job, and you're doing all these things. But when I talk with community members, when I talk with parents, when I talk about families with what success looks like, and they give me that picture, I often turn around and I'm going to say to you today, was that your pathway to success? And is that the only way to be successful within our community? And are we teaching and showing children, and that's what we're doing within our college career and community readiness, that there are alternative pathways to being successful. And there's many. I use the analogy of like a highway for college career and community readiness, that it doesn't matter if what on-ramp you get on or what exit you take off that highway, you're eventually going to get to your destination. There's just many routes to get there, and none of them are wrong. Some of them just may take more time or have a different route. And are we supportive of families, and are we supportive of children and young adults that have a different pathway to success? And are we not judging them based on that? I don't know that we're often doing that as a community. Oops. The other piece behind that, and I use this with educators all the time, and adults, is that we keep talking about and thinking of success as a straight line from point A to point B, and that there's no bumps along the way. What success really looks like is the picture on your right, with the whole messiness and the squiggles in the middle. And I can tell you right now, with our back to school planning for September 1st, and after our board meeting last night, we keep thinking that it's going to be a straight line A to B to get to a plan and to get our kids safely back into school and back into learning on September 1st. I'm telling you, I'm in the middle and feeling and experiencing with educators and families right now. We're in the middle of the squiggles, but we are going to get there, and we're going to have a successful start of the school year. When we start thinking about Oshkosh Area School District programming options for college career and community readiness, what we're really focused on, and if we weren't in a COVID-19 world, I would be more focused on that right now, but is really on children, and especially teens in our school district, have a choice on their learning environment. How do they want to learn, and how are they going to get to the skills and places that they want to be post-secondary or after graduation in order to meet their hopes and dreams. So students have a choice in where they learn, like through programs of choice. So like in our Global Academy at West High School, or communities at Oshkosh North, or in our Oshkosh Area School District E-Academy, or in our School to Work program in partnership with Oshkosh Defense, Oshkosh Corp. We have work-based learning opportunities. We have dual credit opportunities. And then you might see on there this purple Zello, Xello, all over the place. That used to be Career Cruising, or that is an online platform that's almost like a matchmaker, a survey that helps students walk them through building the strategies to make a plan, make an alternative plan, make another parallel plan to say, if this is where I want to go, or this is what I want to do after I graduate from high school, how do I get there? And so for our college career and community readiness, this past January, I spoke with Vicki Poyer, who is our career and technical education coordinator for the Oshkosh Area School District. We spoke to all the incoming 9th graders at both Oshkosh North and Oshkosh West this past January. But what we really want our students as they go into high school, we want all students. We want the opportunities to be there for all kids. Is we want students to explore career connections to their passions and their interests, understand that career pathways have many different entry points. It's that highway that I talked about, and that pathways can be combined in different ways to meet a young adult's hopes and dreams. And us as adults, are we going to be okay with that and supportive of them? Explore similarities, differences in transferable credits. We have all kinds of dual credit opportunities within our high schools, and are we capitalizing on that? And from an equity lens, do all of our students have the opportunity to hear about these programs, and our system set up that way, and understand the concept of parallel pathways, and success is not always linear. Here's a little quiz, and I'll pause for a second, but when we're in Zello or Career Cruising, what would you guess is the number one career inside of Zello that students are picking or students are searching for? I'll give you a second to think of what that career might be. Okay, so you got that career. The number one most searched career in Zillow is professional athlete. And so with professional athlete, we absolutely have some young adults and some teens that absolutely could be professional athletes. I don't think that's all 10,000 of our Oshkosh Area School District students. And so that's where we start talking about parallel pathways, that you may be super interested in becoming a professional athlete, but where can that passion take you? Could it be in exercise science? Could it be in a health career fashion? Could it be in a small business entrepreneur, etc.? But really looking at parallel pathways. So putting this all together, as we're talking about all this, that's what we are really doing within our system, is how do we connecting our equity work that we're doing, our standards-based learning, assessments, being college, career, and community ready. And I'll come back to this because I think some people are going to have some questions on that. But I really think of this as Lego blocks. So instead of the puzzle pieces, because it's a lot more complicated than that, I'm thinking about, think about each of the things or the components we're talking about as the Lego blocks. And so in our system, in our school system, and notice they're all different colors and possibly different shapes. How do we put things all together so that we have a system and that we're building, what could this look like so everybody's accessing and has equitable opportunities? So I'm kind of a Star Wars sci-fi geek, so here you go. Could we be building, take that pile of Legos and build this? Or could we be building this? Or could we be building this? Because every single community, we have all those same building blocks, but as a community and as a school system, we can be putting this all together to be bringing, building something pretty cool or unique. So I'm going to exit out of here, and I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I just did a whole lot of talking, and I would love some interaction or some questions. All right. Well, I hope somebody can hear me, or right now I have like dead silence.
I can, did anybody have any questions that they wanted to message Julie on the chat feature and ask a question? I'll ask a question, Julie. I know that
Absolutely.
obviously you have a number of different partnerships with different
Mm-hmm.
corporations. Obviously, Oshkosh Corporation is one of them. Can you talk about the success of the program with the students that are on site and doing some of that hands-on learning, and what that program has looked like?
Right. So if you think back to that slide I had, that Wordle with all the different things, and learning environment was big in there. One thing that our students are asking for, and our families are asking for, is what type of learning environment? How can we get my child, or how can I as a student get immersed and engaged in a way that in learning that really works for me and that's going to push me forward to meet my hopes and dreams? So our partnership with Oshkosh Defense, our Oshkosh Corp, in the School to Work program is now entering its third year. So we have 2 years under our belt, our third year, and we can take up to 12 juniors and 12 seniors. And you start your junior year and you loop up into your senior year. But these 12 students, in each grade level, junior, senior year, they work in a youth apprenticeship position at Oshkosh Defense. They rotate through a couple different like assembler, painter, some different job categories, and they work 4 hours a day with a mentor for pay through youth apprenticeship. And then the other part of the day, they are in a very specific course load or content load to get them college, career, and community ready that has dual credits with Fox Valley Technical College, that is focused on earning a manufacturing standard skills certificate, and also getting their GMA, their general, I'm not going to remember what GMA stands for, but anyway, it's their welding certificate from Fox Valley Technical College. And so they do that over 2 years. And so students that graduated from this program, actually we had, I believe, 5 students graduate from that program this past June. I know one for sure is a full-time Oshkosh Defense employee, and others are going on to complete their career pathway inside of Fox Valley Technical College, or going on to do other things. But they work, and they're doing their schooling right on the Oshkosh Defense campus with the Oshkosh Area School District teacher. And it's really cool. Our kids really like doing that.
That's fantastic. Are you looking at other businesses to partner with that to do the same thing?
We would love to, because this model seems to really work. I know that Amcor is very interested in doing this with us, and so now that we've got the model established, we can apply it to other businesses. Amcor happens to be another manufacturer, but we've also talked about how in the future could we apply it to other career areas as well. On the chat feature, it says, can you help us understand what the opening to the school year will look like for students based on the decisions at the school board meeting last night? So, does anybody else have any questions on equity or college career and community readiness? Otherwise, I can talk a little bit more about the instructional models and what school's gonna potentially look like in the fall, around September 1st. Oh my gosh, you guys are pretty quiet. Like on other Zoom meetings I'm on, we're sometimes a lot more chatty. So, or maybe it's because we've been working in that virtual world. Oops. Oh, let me back up here. So last night at the school board meeting, we presented a plan to the school board for the 2021 school year. And within that had many things about protocols, organizations, logistics, etc. And a big part of it, and the part that I presented and the part that I oversee, is what will the instructional models look like? What would teaching and learning look like across this? And as we started to put the models together and talk about what they look like and the definitions of, or what would be made up in each of those models, the big part of this is that we could flow through each of those models depending on what is happening in a particular classroom, in a school, or within the community, so that we can put in safety protocols, put safety into place wherever we can. In addition to that, also expanding out e-Academy. So I'll come to that because that's an area that I'm overseeing and implementing. So as you can see across here, there are 4 different models that we could potentially flow through or move to within during the school year, depending on the needs. So model number 1 is what you would think of as normal school. We are not starting there. Model 2 is modified in-person learning. So in other words, students are coming to school, their home school, in person 5 days a week, but those safety protocols and those safety precautions are all are all in place, such as social distancing, wearing a mask, making sure that we have enhanced sanitizing and cleaning protocols in place. Model 3 is a hybrid model, and Model 3 is really designed to reduce the student capacity or reduce the capacity of the building. And with that, it's a mix of in-person and virtual learning. And so students are either placed in an A group or a B group, and they, on a rotating basis, they attend school in person, and then they're virtual, they attend school in person, and then they're virtual. And then model number 4 is virtual learning, and that's all learning takes place remotely. So it's taking what was going on in the face-to-face classroom or in the hybrid model and moving it to 100% virtual. Outside of those 4 models is eAcademy, and that's a fully virtual year-long online school option. And that option provides families and students with the choice of not flowing through those models. So you're still a student at Oshkosh North, Oshkosh West, one of the middle schools, one of the elementary schools, but instead of your classroom being in the brick and mortar building, your classroom is over here in eAcademy, where you will be 100% virtual with your teachers over in that 100% virtual environment. And families that are interested in that option and not flowing through the models for the school year, we ask that you either complete your application or confirm your interest in that by August 10th. So where the board landed last night is these would be the models at each of the levels. So in elementary, we would start on September 1st with the modified in-person learning. So the elementary student would be attending school 5 days a week with safety precautions in place, such as wearing face coverings, social distancing where possible. Matt Kemmer, our Director of Pupil Services, talked a lot about what those safety protocols would be, and that's also in the handbook. And you can see the website right there. Then for the middle level, it would be Model 3, which is hybrid learning. So students would be in the A group or the B group. I wish I had better name than A group or B group, but that's how the computer works behind the scenes with the attendance and organizing students. And students would, if you were in the A group, you would be face-to-face on the A day. The next day you would be virtual, and the same thing at the high school. And I can talk more about that if you'd like. And then once again, or not start the school year in those models and select for the full school year, you're going to be in that virtual classroom or inside that eAcademy. So let me get out of there. So let's see. There was, how's the school district going to deal with fevers in the K-5 schools, quarantine, required testing, and what will that look like? In that handbook document that's being finalized, that's on the website, there's an outline of what that looks like. In addition to that, now that that handbook is approved, there's going to be flow charts, not the right way to say this, but there's going to be like a decision chart, if that makes sense, on exactly what would it look like. So if X, Y, and Z, then A, B, and C. If this, then that, and that'll be coming. And one thing that the Department of Health Services said last night is that I don't think anybody in our community can require testing, because one thing the Department of Health Services said last night is that do we even have the capability or the capacity within our community to require testing? And then there's a question here from Charles's iPad. So hi, Charles. Are there other career types that work with other companies like Oshkosh Corp, examples like law enforcement, food industry? And that's a great question, and we would love to do that. I think that's on our future strategic plan list, is that now that we have that model down and we know that it works, we would love to be able to do that and have kids choose that learning environment or that learning option, especially if it meets their career pathway or what they would like to do. We would love to do that. Other questions?
Julie, if somebody chooses to start the school with the e-learning, are they able to come back, mid-semester if they choose to?
So the OASD Academy is a true virtual school option. And if a family is going to choose that for their child or their family, they're really committing for it for the year, because you're saying as a family, we don't want to go through the back and forth through those 4 models, depending on what's going on within the community or in a school, in a school. So you're really choosing that for the school, for the whole school year. And especially for elementary students, I would recommend that you're committing for the whole school year. Technically, could you go back at the semester to your school to in-person learning? Yes, you could. It is 10 times easier to do that at the middle school or high school level, because you're really enrolled in courses that are semesterized. For an elementary student, it's a little bit harder, because the E-Academy virtual learning curriculum is designed to be virtual or delivered online specifically. And so our curriculum that's in our classrooms that we use in the OASD is designed to be given, face-to-face with technology integration, that type of thing. And so with that, all students will get to the same spot in proficiency levels at the end of the school year, but it's not going to line up perfectly to, let's say, leave in the middle of the semester, leave at the semester. It'll line up when you're at the end of the year and being able to go into the next school year. I hope that makes sense. So everybody's going to end in the same spot, but you're using a different curriculum that's designed to be 100% virtual from the very beginning. So it would be, to me, if it was my child, I would not recommend that they leave elementary, especially the elementary E-Academy in the middle of the year, to go back to their traditional classroom. Can you do it? Sure. Yes, you can do it. I wouldn't recommend it. So if you're going to choose that option, it really is for the school year.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Ooh. Wow, you put your sweater on, Rachel.
I did. I was cold in here. Any other questions for Julie?
Well,
No?
I guess my presentation was so great that,
I think Will just asked one.
Yeah, when does the district start promoting educating in advance of the referendum? Actually, Will, at our principal meeting that we had on Wednesday, we started the process of having, what do we call them? Not lunch and learns, but starting to form groups at each school so that we can get principals and other school community members or members of the school community at each of the schools informed on what that referendum means coming up here in the next few weeks. So thing number 1 is we got to start school on September 1st, and then also get those groups going so we can start the education flow for the referendum. So that's coming, and we just talked about it on Wednesday. Oh, how are you deciding who is an A group and B group? Oh, this is actually pretty, I don't know who Charles here is, but it's actually pretty cool. With this. So inside of Infinite Campus is our student information system. And as you can imagine, this is not just a Oshkosh thing or a Wisconsin thing, it's a nationwide thing. And Infinite Campus is a national student information system, like they're a national vendor. And so with that, they had already been working on, and we had already said, like, how are we going to keep track of this hybrid model? Like if students aren't in what we traditionally are thinking of every day in person. And so behind the scenes, what it does is it uses an algorithm, and it first starts with a child's household. And so that every child that's in a household, you would be in the same group. So let's say that you have a Tippler student and a West student, so that your Tippler student's not in the A group and your West student's in the B group. Households, it would be nice if we were all on the same schedule, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then it first looks at households and divides them up. And then by school, what it does is it pulls you out and pulls the sections, like reduces the class size and cuts it in half, A and B. And we've done 5 different trials, and we've been doing it on West, since that's the big 1,700 kids. And it looks really good, and it's pretty. I don't know who the smart people were behind that, but they did a really good job of doing that. Also, we have, so the A group, B group, and we can shift some things around, etc. But it will run it so that it keeps it at as close to 50% on each day as possible. And households are together. And so let's say, for example, like elementary went to Model 3. So let's say that you're a family that has an elementary, a middle, and a high school student. You would, once again, your household would be on the same schedule, with the same rotation. We thought moms think of that, so. And dads too, right? Oh, those are good questions.
Really good questions. Any other additional questions for Julie? All right. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for all this great information. We really appreciate your time today, and for talking to us about college community career ready, and for equity within the Oshkosh Area School District, and for talking more about what it looks like for the upcoming school year. And we have our next West Side Association meeting on September 3rd. Amy Albright from the Oshkosh Convention and Visitors Bureau will be doing our September 3rd virtual meeting, and she has graciously donated some Beckett's gift cards for our meeting today. So thank you, Amy, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So we will be drawing some names for that. So if we reach out, congratulations, you won some gift cards. So again, thank you, Julie, for your time, and hopefully everyone enjoys the rest of their afternoon.
Yes, feel free to reach. I put my email address real quick in the chat, and so feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or I can help in any way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Bye.
Rachel, do you want me to end the meeting would you like me to just end the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, that works. Thank you so much. You did fantastic. It was great.
Okay, good. There's not a lot of feedback when everybody has no video or sound. So anyway, all right, sounds good.
Thanks, Rachel. Yep. Bye.